Hi, I'm Shemane. I nearly died from toxic mold between the walls of my home that was once featured on MTV Cribs. I never saw anything, I just kept getting sicker and sicker. If you're wondering why you're sick, maybe you're living in a killer house too. I'm on a mission from God to help you recognize, remediate, and recover from not just toxic mold, but other environmental illnesses too. I'm so glad you're here. My guest today is Andrew Melrose, and he helps people heal environmental illness without anxiety. Andrew, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Great to be here.
So, how do you help people heal from mold and environmental illnesses without anxiety? Tell me a little bit about what you do, but even start at the beginning. Why did you get into this?
Yeah, great question. First of all, yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And I've always been passionate about health. I myself was not very healthy growing up, riddled with fear and anxiety, just didn't have peace, and had just no direction in life. Got into a lot of different things growing up, and as I started to learn about the anatomy and the body, I just really got pretty fascinated with it. And about 4 years ago, I learned about the environmental side and how that's a total pillar of health, that we're breathing 3,000 gallons of air a day. So that can add up. As I met someone named Tom Ray, he really started to guide me into what he did for work, and wasn't really sure about it. And then it's until I started doing some in-person inspections with him and testing, I started to really realize what type of industry this was. And when I had my first crying client, one who was really, in a lot of debt from mold, had a lot of chronic illness going on, all these different situations, I left that with a real awakening within myself, seeing that I had missed a big pillar of health. And I couldn't leave that house with a good conscience, in thinking that, hey, I'm only going to know half of this information. So I got pretty obsessed for the next year or so, learning about how mold specifically, is impacting our indoor environment. And then also started to learn from a lot of health professionals about how it impacts the body. And I just want to give the most information I can. So I do in-person inspections and consulting throughout the process, because people need a lot of help and direction on this, and a lot of support.
Now, Tom Ray, any relation to Dr. William Ray?
I don't believe so.
Okay, because he's the doctor from the Environmental Health Center that I went to 20 years ago, and he saved my life. It's a long time ago when this happened to me. I think you know my story. My house that was on MTV Cribs was contaminated with mold between the walls. We never saw anything. We just kept getting sicker and sicker. And back then, no doctor could help me. I had to become my own investigative sleuth to find out, talk about anxiety and so many symptoms that I was getting, like debilitating migraines. But walk me through some of the steps of what you do to actually help people get over their anxiety in dealing with environmental illness. Because I was just talking to Mike, the guy. I'm at a new studio. I walk into the studio and I kind of like sniff it out. Like, is it okay for me? I'm like the canary in a coal mine.
No, that's a very real thing, and I totally understand both sides. Like, I completely empathize with the ultra sensitive, and I truly have hope that they can heal. I believe our bodies are miraculously made. I know, the power that made the body heals the body, if you've heard that quote before. And so there is, there's a lot of factors that go on to how a body will react to this stuff. But I just have a true optimistic approach that wisdom can solve every problem, and that knowledge is power. It's just, where do we want to direct that power? So I find that a lot of people can get an onslaught of information about this, and they have a choice in that moment. And they might feel like it's not necessarily a choice, but what am I going to do with this information? Am I going to go in total fear mode and like, oh shoot, everything's out to get me? Or am I going to say, okay, now that I have some information, I'm going to take responsibility, ownership of my body and of my environment, and do the best I can with what I know how. So I really help to give people that knowledge, which can be power, and really a bigger context. So I'll just be real about social media. Social media is such a snapshot, right? Like, I use this analogy. If we don't know the whole process from A to Z in mold in a house and mold in the body, for instance, then we get a snapshot of all the little letters in the alphabet, and we try to piece in the rest. And there's a lot of anxiety in like how we fill in the gaps. The everyday person, I can't expect, a mom of three who's busy and has all these different, things going on in life, to properly interpret all the information that comes via Facebook groups and Instagram and things, it can be really tough because, you're mama bear and you're on, you're trying to keep yourself and your family protected. And I, again, completely know that, but that's why it's really important for me to give a lot of context about a lot of different things. And do you want me to go into a few of those?
Yeah, I was going to say, walk me through it. Like, say, okay, I just found out my house is contaminated with mold. I'm really sick. What do I do? No, I have one doctor that could help me. I'm just saying hypothetically. Found one doctor who could help me. Some of my family members think I'm crazy, which will happen. My children have to go into school, but maybe they're going to get exposed. There's so many chemicals in the air, and everywhere I go, there's Glade plug-in air fresheners that contaminate the air, and I feel like I can't go anywhere. What do I do, Andrew?
That's a great question. So you're talking about someone who's already very much down the road and already, pretty burdened by this. So some analogy that I do like to give is that toxic bucket we've all, seen that our bodies kind of have these limits where it starts to really react in many, many different ways. And what I've also noticed with mold is that if mold is really attacking the body a lot, then the body will prioritize that first, intruder and kind of take a break and put on the shelf, your other issues you might be having with the body as well, and we'll prioritize that. With someone in that situation who's already pretty far down the road, I would say that getting the right support, getting really paying attention. Do you feel better when you're out of the home versus in the home? Obviously, at this point of what you just described, they probably would be. There's already some relational issues going on. I would say too, ask a third-party inspector who is certified to do proper testing and inspection, top to bottom, all the way around of your home, to really find those sources. And when I look at a home, I'll just quickly go into this and then finish with the rest of your question. When I'm looking at a home, I'm trying to see what is impacting the health of the home overall. I don't believe that behind the corner of one little baseboard under a window can radically mess up someone's health for life if it's just such a small amount. We're looking at concentrations of types and amounts that is just going to burden the body over time. So, for instance, if you live on top of a crawl space that's very, highly humid and has all types of mold down there, you're living based on top of a swamp, and that via the stacking effect and things is going to move upwards and impact the health of the home a lot. And if your HVAC system, which this is so common, that is such a housing place for a lot of toxins to be, if it hasn't been serviced for a while, if there were a lot of different issues in that. And every time the heat and cool kicks on, it cycles and moves everything around. So when I'm looking at the home, those are big concentration points. Basement, crawl space, attic, HVAC system, that adds a lot of surface area that's impacting the entire home. At the place where this individual would be, she would need to find a good health practitioner who's going to really empathize and understand her journey and know who's mold literate, to understand how it's interacting with the body, and then how to get the proper detox protocol in a safe manner. Open up the drainage pathways. That's not my main profession, but I'm talking with these health professionals all the time. So I'm at least, understanding on both sides. So you want to get a health professional for the body, and you want to get an inspector for the home, and hopefully someone who can speak the language kind of simply and not overwhelm too much. And then talk to the family, if they're open to it, about, hey guys, something simple with pollen, for instance. I was a kid who would get all the flare-ups about just pollen in the spring, right? And then someone else could go and lick pollen off the car and it wouldn't affect them. So we need to use brief analogies for people that everyone is a little bit different, and our bodies are antennas. They really can tell us and speak to us. We got to be still to pay attention to it. And I just truly have a deep belief that we can heal from anything, even a really rough situation like that. If we lower that concentration in the home and we get it to maybe 90%, that's what I try to tell people. Go to 90. If you try to go for 100, all the stress is in that 10% because you're trying to get perfect. And I think our bodies can get strong enough in the process to take care of that last 10% that maybe is not perfect in the home. So it's a balancing act of home and body. So long-winded answer, but hopefully that helped.
No, that's true. And it reminded me, I've been on this journey for 20 years now, and yet it still happens to us. Even recently, we demolished our home that was on MTV Cribs.
Yeah, wow.
It was no longer there, but we have 1,000 acres of swampland that my husband loves. And it's not all swampland, but he loves to go hunting up there. So we built a 700 square foot log cabin. Built that 18 years ago, and we'd go up there during the summer and fall, and Ted would like to hunt there, and it's all great. Well, this past year we went up, this past summer we went up there, and I started getting migraines again. And you brought up something, how do you feel in the house? How do you feel when you're out of the house? So I went, Ted, I used to get migraines when I was in the MTV Cribs house, 3 to 5 migraines a week. And I would feel better when I was traveling with my husband on the road. So that's a big indicator for me. All of a sudden, I'm getting migraines. Ted couldn't sleep. Neither of us could sleep. I'm like, you know what? We never got this house tested. And exactly what you said, like it was just a little log cabin, right? But there was a crawl space underneath it that had no ventilation, Andrew. So it was literally like living on top of a swamp. But here's the clincher. So we get it all remediated. I know how to do this, right? Clean it all out using non-toxic substances and cleaning agents, but really not cleaning agents. But then what happened was one of the guys that was working for us and cleaning out recommended to Ted, hey, I found this paint called Kilz, K-I-L-Z.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he's reading the label to Ted, and he goes, and it's supposed to prevent mold. You want me to paint that on the walls of the crawl space? And Ted goes, yeah, go ahead. So I come in there after they had painted, and Ted says, I think everything's okay. Come on in. And I went, I literally opened the door, had 1 foot in the house, and went, what is that smell?
Wow.
What is that? I could tell already the canary in the coal mine was, and I was right. So it's about, being smart. There are people who are really caught up and have no place to go. And worse than that, people in their lives are, they think they're crazy. They think they don't understand. I remember when we were on oxygen, both Ted and I were on oxygen 2 hours a day. I was the person that you'd see in the grocery store with the oxygen cart behind me, with the oxygen mask on. And some of our family didn't understand that. So that's hard too. I like your steps of being, let's go for 90%. Let's not try to get it all. And how do you work with, somebody who, let's say a husband and wife, one person's sick, one is not, which can happen, right?
All the time. So the pollen analogy is a basic surface one that I just mentioned. That's something that I will bring up. I also, if it is, let's say the husband, I'll talk and I'll say, man, God made the woman to be like an antenna, and they sense things much quicker than we do on a lot of things. And even scientifically, there's a lot about, how fat cells, more fat cells in the woman, how it can hold on to some of this stuff more. Also previous exposures. I've had the other way around where the husband feels it and the wife doesn't. We don't know at 7 years old, did we just get pounded by this one exposure so heavily, and we were just living, life free and happy as a kid, and maybe didn't have as many symptoms. And later on in life, here's my other analogy. If you got bit by a Rottweiler as a kid, and then you're 25 and your nervous system's still very awake to Rottweilers. Why? Because you already got hurt by it. So at a micro level, our body is so ready and aware to react to a new exposure because it already had that previous, exposure before, whether we had flare-ups or not. And so I really like to explain to people, you don't know what they were exposed to, previously. And the body is just, it's brilliant, but it's also, there's a lot of questions we have to ask, like why, is it the liver? Is it there's a lot of different things that are, going on with this. So I build bridges all the time. No one is crazy. They're just in process on getting their health back, and they're building their story. And I love that you're sharing yours, because that's really, really key. And this is something I also tell people often. If I wasn't able to speak about this to you and do inspections and offload all this information, I'd be freaked out all the time. But I have a place to give it. There's a lot of people who it's just flood of info and their own sickness, and they have nowhere to give the information. So all they do is run in circles around their house. Oh my God, maybe it's here. And that's the only place they give it. And it's even more stressful. So immediately I say, if you're going through this, there is someone in your life who's dealing with it, and either they know it or they don't know it. It's time to start immediately turning your pain into that purpose, and and reaching out to them and starting to share about this. Even if you're in a lot of hurt, it's really important to offload this information, because there are too many homes in the country right now that are not built well, that are mold contaminated, and a lot of bodies that are just overwhelmed. So everybody immediately gets a purpose. Even if it hurts, it's worth it. And we can go and start to share that story.
I always felt like God was nudging me to tell my story, and I never really did. And then we had four of our homes had mold over the years, and it
Wow.
keeps happening to us, even recently. And I felt like, okay, God, I'm listening. So I do agree. I think that, God moves us and nudges us to tell our story and share our stories. And that helps other people. They go, wow, that's happened to me. I get so many times, you must get this also, that people hear my story and go, I'm so glad you spoke out. Like, I just 2 days ago, I had this woman say that I saved her life because she was getting sick. Her daughter was getting sick. Nobody was helping her. And I just recommended on one of the live videos I did on social media, get your house tested. How do you feel inside? How do you feel out? Same thing that you're saying. What are some of the things that you recommend to people about dealing with anxiety?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right off the bat, I do also like to tell them what mold is, because again, they think it's just this dark, horrible thing that's going to come and immediately kill them. And at a physiological level, it does feel that. Mold is God's decomposer. The woods would be completely full if mold didn't, at some way just put it back in the earth and recycle it. Mold is nature's decomposer, and it has a purpose. All things are good, and we're created for good. Now, if our bodies are already in a state of, not so good, we already have these toxins and things going on already, that decomposer is going to start, we're going to feel that. A lot of people are feeling this decomposing agent, and they're like, it's a reason why. So I do really like to affirm people that what you're feeling is very real. And the first test you can do for your home is your body on a lot of this. I mean, I've had people guide me directly to where I need to test from what they've sensed in their body. I said, oh, that was free. And what wasn't free was your symptoms you had to go through. But really affirm people that, you are feeling what you're feeling, and it's very real. But to lower the anxiety, I always use that analogy with the dog and being bit, but really getting people back to stillness and realizing that, okay, my body is a precious temple. It's a miraculous, creation made by God, but our spirit is who we truly are. And if I can sit back, be still, and breathe into who I am, then I can realize, okay, maybe from here, I can really get wisdom on how to heal the body from the inside out. What is the best, inspector to go with? What is the best next step for my house? What is the new, finances that can come to me? There's a solution in the stillness and the peace that we have. Because if we just go on reaction, and this is with anything in life, not just, mold illness, but if we just go based on nervous system, reactions, rather than really sitting in stillness with a methodical approach and a response, then definitely there's going to be more stress and tension. So I just tell people, hey, let's start to really convince your body that you're healing and you're on your road to healing. Let's get the right supplements to you and believe those supplements are going to work. That, right? How about that?
So, you know what, having a positive mental attitude about this whole thing is difficult. I almost died. I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs if my life depended on it. And when you can't take care of your family because you don't have any energy. I remember my son was running a track meet, and I remember, doggone it, I'm going to make it to that track meet. Like that was at the point where I could barely get out of bed. And I remember getting in my car, driving there, thinking about how daunting that was, believe it or not. And I parking my car, walking, outdoor to the track meet, and then looking up the bleachers going, how am I going to do this? How am I going to walk up the bleachers, And so it is daunting. You are the first person that I have talked to that is addressing the anxiety issue of being, when you're exposed to mold and environmental illness. So thank you so much for doing that, for speaking out. I'm so glad that our paths have crossed. Tell everybody how they can find you and follow you.
Yeah, so my Instagram handle is most active, where I'm most active. It's Mold Authority Live, LIVE. And our company, online, you can find us at moldauthority.com. We do in-person inspections. I'm in the North and South Carolina market. We have inspectors starting to really scale throughout the country, branches all up and down the East Coast, and we're going more. So just a good, honest approach, and we're going to do the best we can with what we know how to, and really have a good methodical approach to get the house assessed and tested properly. And yeah, so my passion, like you said, is really to get people never to shame anyone for their anxiety and hardships. What you went through is completely real, but I think it is very needed, not to just say, hey, don't fear it, but really get in the weeds with people and say, like, all right, how can we really go through this and take every step at a time. So I do have online consultation options as well. A direct email can be melrosehealthconsulting@gmail.com. Melrose Health Consulting at Gmail. And so that's just a personal way that I've been able to consult people through the process. What will insurance cover this? Or how do I vet a company? There's so many questions that people can either waste a lot of time, money, and just energy on not knowing the steps. Because unfortunately, when we turn 18, we don't get this pamphlet that says this is how to deal with being a homeowner or a renter and all these situations, right? And so I've gotten flooded with every question in the book, and I still feel like I'm on the forefront of many new questions because every person and every home is different. And so I just really like to help fill in those gaps for people at a low cost but very high value, so they can put their money towards a solution, which is healing their body and healing their home.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Andrew. I know we're going to be working together a lot more in the future, and I hope everybody goes to your website, especially if they're in your area. So thank you so much for joining me, and thank you, everybody, for watching. I will see you next week, and don't forget, join my Wildly Well community at ShemaneNugent.rocks/wildlywell-resolution. See you next week.